vodka burned going down, but I needed it. Commander Vincent Holt, that's me, sitting in a Houston motel room at 3 a.m., uploading this to a server in Iceland because every American platform scrubbed my previous attempts within minutes. If you're reading this, it means the dead man's switch worked. 3 days ago, I was screaming at Mission Control to review the footage. Now I'm persona non grata, my security clearance revoked, my marriage dissolved via a phone call that lasted 18 seconds. Jenna didn't even sound like herself. The words came out mechanical, rehearsed. It's over, Vincent. Don't contact me again. Click. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The Artemis 7 mission launched from Cape Canaveral on October 14th. Our objective? Survey potential sites for a permanent lunar base on the far side, the hemisphere that never faces Earth, where the cosmos screams in radio silence. 4 of us. Me, mission commander. Dr. Lawrence Grimm, geologist. Sergeant Blake Tucker, our pilot. And Jack Voss, the green kid from MIT who'd never been past low Earth orbit. Jack kept making jokes during the 3-day transit. Nervous energy. He'd hum David Bowie songs while checking instruments, make up stupid lyrics. Ground control to Major Jackass, your fly's been open since we left Earth. That kind of shit. Tucker would tell him to shut up, but the big guy was grinning. We all were. The far side insertion burn went perfect. We descended into the Aitken Basin, the oldest and deepest impact crater on the moon, where shadows pool in permanent midnight. The plan: 3 EVAs over 4 days, then home. Tucker set us down smooth as silk. The landing site was designated Sierra 7, a flat plain between 2 ancient ridgelines. Through the windows, the lunar surface stretched grey and lifeless under a black sky glazed with stars that didn't twinkle. No atmosphere to soften them. They stared back, hard as diamond chips. "Looks dead," Voss said, pressing his face against the glass. "Everything's dead out here," Tucker replied. "That's the point." But Grimm was frowning at his instruments. "Anyone else getting weird seismic readings?" I checked the data, micro-tremors, rhythmic, almost like a pulse. "Probably just instrument calibration," I said. "We'll run diagnostics before EVA1. That night, though day and night mean nothing on the moon, I couldn't sleep. The cramped sleeping quarters smelled like recycled sweat and plastic. Through the small porthole beside my bunk, I watched the ridgeline to the north. The shadows there seemed deeper than they should be. Geometric. Tucker was snoring in the rack below. Voss was muttering in his sleep, words I couldn't make out. And Grimm. Grimm was standing at the main observation window, just staring out at the darkness. "You okay?" I whispered. He didn't turn around. "Do you hear that?" I listened. Nothing but the life support hum. "Hear what?" "Exactly," he said. Morning came by clock time only. We suited up in silence, each of us running through the pre-EVA checklist with the kind of focused calm that astronauts get paid for. Grimm kept glancing at his seismic monitor. The rhythmic tremors had continued through the sleep cycle, faint but consistent. "Probably thermal expansion," Tucker offered, checking his helmet seals. "The surface contracts when it cools." "Thermal expansion isn't rhythmic," Grimm said. "It's random." "Then equipment malfunction." Tucker's voice carried that edge of irritation. He'd been a Navy pilot before NASA, the kind of guy who trusted machines more than theories. "We'll check it during the EVA." Voss laughed, high and nervous. "Maybe it's moon people." Little grey men knocking on the basement door. Nobody responded to that. The joke hung in the recycled air, dying slowly. I pulled my helmet on. The HUD flickered to life, bathing my vision in soft green displays. "Comms check. Holt here. Tucker, check. Grimm, check. Voss, check. And hey, Commander, if we do find moon people, I'm negotiating first contact. I've been practicing." "Practicing what?" I asked despite myself. "My alien pickup lines." "Hey, baby, is your dad a thief? Because someone stole all the stars and put them in your..." "Depressurizing airlock," I announced, cutting him off. The hiss of escaping air filled the chamber, my suit pressurized, tightening around my chest and limbs. Through the outer window, the lunar surface waited, grey dust, black sky, and those ridgelines with their geometric shadows. The outer door opened. I stepped out first. My boots crunched in the regolith, kicking up powder that fell immediately without air to suspend it. The silence was absolute. On Earth, you're never in real silence. There's always wind, or birds, or the distant hum of civilization. Here, the only sound was my own breathing and the faint crackle of radio static. "Beautiful," Tucker said, joining me on the surface. His voice came through tinny and compressed, like walking on the bottom of a dry ocean. Grim descended the ladder, moving with careful precision. He planted a seismic sensor package 20 meters from the lander, working methodically, while Voss documented everything with the helmet camera. I walked toward the northern ridge. Mission parameters called for a preliminary survey of the area, collecting core samples and photographing geological features. Standard procedure, boring even, except those shadows bothered me. They formed almost perfect triangles between the ridgeline peaks, too symmetrical. I pulled out the manual camera, old school, mechanical, no digital corruption, and took several shots. Through the viewfinder, something seemed off about the way the darkness pooled in those valleys. "Commander, you seeing this?" Grim's voice crackled over the radio. I turned. He was crouched by his seismic equipment, staring at the readout screen on his wrist display. "Talk to me, Larry." The tremors stopped. I checked my chronometer. "When?" "Exactly when we opened the airlock." He looked up at me, and through his visor I could see his face had gone pale. "To the second, Vince." "The exact second." Tucker bounded over in the low gravity. "Coincidence?" "I don't believe in coincidence," Grim said quietly. Voss was the furthest from the lander, collecting samples near an outcropping of rock. He'd been quiet for several minutes. Unusual for him. Through the helmet-to-helmet channel, I could hear him humming again. Not Bowie this time. Something else. Something I didn't recognize. "Jack. Status." No response, just that humming, low and rhythmic. "Voss, respond." The humming stopped. "Sorry, Commander." Got distracted. This rock formation is weird as hell. Basalt, I think, but the crystalline structure is wrong. Too organized. "Bag it and return to the lander. Copy that." But he didn't move. He just stood there facing that outcropping, his white suit stark against the grey landscape. "Jack? Do you guys remember what we're doing here?" His voice had changed, flatter. "Like, really remember?" "I can't. The mission brief is fuzzy." "You feeling okay?" Tucker asked. "Check your oxygen mix." "O2 is fine. It's just, God, this is stupid, never mind." Voss grabbed his sample bag and started back toward us. Too much coffee before launch. Makes me weird, but his gait was off. He moved too smoothly, almost floating, and he'd been walking on the moon for less than an hour. It takes days to get that comfortable in 1/6 gravity. I glanced back at the ridgeline. Those shadows hadn't moved. Of course they hadn't. The sun was effectively stationary in the lunar sky. But I felt watched. The sensation crawled up my spine despite the suit's temperature regulation. "EVA-1 complete," I announced. "Everyone back to the lander. We need to review the seismic data and run full system diagnostics." "What about the secondary survey site?" Tucker asked. "Tomorrow." I didn't explain why I wanted everyone inside. Didn't mention the way Voss was moving or how Grim's tremor readings had stopped at the exact moment we exposed ourselves to. To what? Vacuum? Radiation? The lunar surface? To being observed. As we climbed back into the airlock, I took one last look at the northern ridge. The shadows between the peaks seemed darker now. Deeper. And unless I was losing my mind, they'd grown longer while we'd been outside. The sun hadn't moved, but the shadows had. Inside the lander, we stripped out of our suits in the cramped equipment bay. Voss moved with that same unsettling grace, his fingers working the seals without looking. Muscle memory for a procedure he'd only trained for on Earth. Tucker noticed too. I saw his eyes tracking the kid's movements, that pilot's instinct for when something's wrong with the aircraft, or in this case, The crew. "Jack, you sure you're feeling all right?" Tucker asked. "Never better," Voss smiled. His teeth seemed whiter than I remembered. "Why?" "You're moving like you've been here for months." "Guess I'm a natural." He pulled off his helmet and his hair stuck up with static. In the low light of the equipment bay, his pupils looked dilated. Too dilated. "Anyone else starving?" "I could eat a horse." Grim was already at the computer terminal, downloading data from the seismic sensors. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up charts and waveforms. I watched over his shoulder as the tremor patterns materialized on screen. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. The waveforms were perfect sine curves. Not the jagged, irregular patterns you'd expect from random geological activity. These were smooth, artificial, and they'd maintained a precise rhythm for 11 hours before stopping the instant we depressurized the airlock. "Could be equipment failure," Tucker said, but his voice lacked conviction. "All 4 sensors?" Grim shook his head. "Independently calibrated, different manufacturers. The odds of synchronized failure producing identical waveforms are astronomical." "Got it." Tucker rubbed his face. "So what are we saying here? Someone's tapping on the moon's basement floor." "Something," Grim corrected, "not someone." Voss drifted over to the observation window, drawn like a moth to flame. He pressed his palm against the glass, fingers splayed. "It's beautiful out there. Peaceful. You can feel it, right? The quiet." "That's just vacuum," I said. "There's nothing to feel." "No, Commander." He didn't turn around. "You're wrong about that." The way he said it, flat, certain. I'd been in space enough times to recognize when someone was having a bad reaction to the environment. Psychological breaks happened. Astronauts were human, despite the training. But this felt different. Voss wasn't panicking or showing signs of acute stress disorder. He was calm. Too calm. "Jack, I want you to run a full medical diagnostic. Check your blood oxygen, CO2 levels, everything." "I'm fine, Commander." "That's an order." He finally turned from the window. His smile was still there, but it had changed somehow. Harder. "Yes, sir." While Voss hooked himself up to the medical monitor, I pulled Tucker aside to the communications station. "What do you think?" "I think the kid's losing it." Tucker kept his voice low. "Could be delayed stress response. Some people crack after the fact once the adrenaline wears off. Or he's right and we're all going crazy. Those shadows shouldn't have moved, Vince. The sun's position is fixed from our perspective. Shadow length doesn't change. Unless our perception is compromised." "Exactly." Tucker glanced at the medical readout over Voss's shoulder. "His vitals are perfect. Better than perfect, actually. Heart rate is 62, blood pressure optimal, O2 saturation at 100%. That's not normal after EV stress." I pulled up the mission logs on my terminal and started reviewing the helmet cam footage from the surface excursion. Standard procedure demanded it. At timestamp 14:33:07, while Voss was collecting samples near that outcropping, something moved in the background, a shadow detaching itself from the others, flowing like liquid across the regolith. The movement lasted exactly 3 seconds before it merged back into the darkness between the ridgeline peaks. I rewound it, watched again, same thing. A shadow with no source, moving independently. "Larry, come look at this." Grim leaned over my shoulder. I played the segment 3 times. His breathing got heavier with each replay. "That's not possible," he said. "I know. Shadows don't move without a light source changing position." "I know. So either our cameras are malfunctioning or something else is making shadows," I finished. Tucker joined us, squinting at the screen. "Could be dust kicked up by micrometeorite impacts. Looks like movement from the camera angle." "Micrometeorites don't cast shadows," Grim said, "and they don't move that deliberately." I pulled up the exterior camera feeds. 4 wide-angle lenses gave us a 360-degree view around the lander. The northern ridge dominated one quadrant, its peaks jagged against the starfield. In the valley between the two highest peaks, that geometric shadow I'd noticed earlier had definitely grown longer. Not wider, longer, extending toward us like a reaching finger. "How long have we been on the surface?" I asked. Tucker checked the mission clock. 22 hours, 14 minutes. "And in that time, has the sun's position changed relative to our location?" "No, we're in constant sunlight here. That's why they chose this site." "Then explain that," I pointed at the shadow. "Compare it to the images from landing." Tucker pulled up the landing sequence photos. We studied them side by side, the shadow at touchdown versus now. The difference was unmistakable. What had been maybe 30 meters long was now at least 60, stretching toward the lander like a black tongue. "Equipment malfunction," Tucker said, but the words came out hollow. "4 sensors, multiple cameras, all malfunctioning in the same consistent way." Grim shook his head. "That's not malfunction. That's coordination." Voss laughed from the medical station. We all turned to look at him. He was still hooked up to the monitors, but his eyes were closed and his head tilted back, that too white smile on his face. "You guys are hilarious," he said. "All this scientific rationalization. Just say it. We're not alone here." "Jack." "No, Commander, listen. I need to tell you something." His eyes opened. The pupils had returned to normal size, but something about his gaze had changed, too focused, too aware. "When I was at that outcropping touching the rock, I heard something, not through the radio, inside my head. Music, kind of. Beautiful music. And it was explaining things to me. Important things." My mouth went dry. "What kind of things?" "About the towers." "What towers?" "The ones on the other side of the ridge." He said it casually, like he was mentioning the weather. "The ones that have been there for 1,000,000 years. The ones we're supposed to find." Tucker's hand moved to the emergency medical kit on his belt. Sedatives. "Jack, buddy, I think you need to rest." "I've never been more awake." Voss unhooked himself from the medical monitor and stood. "And you'll understand soon, too. When the music starts for you. When they invite you in." "Who?" I demanded. "Who's inviting us?" "The old ones. The sleepers. The patient engineers who've been waiting for us to achieve spaceflight." His smile widened. "They're so excited we finally made it. They've been calling us for decades, but we couldn't hear them until we came to the quiet place." Grim's face had gone white. "Vince, we need to contact Houston, now." I moved to the communications array and initiated the connection protocol. The antenna automatically oriented itself toward Earth, and I sent the call signal. We waited. The lag time should have been about 2 seconds. 5 seconds passed, 10, 20. "Come on," I muttered, adjusting the frequency. Static hissed through the speakers. Then, underneath it, something else. A sound like wind chimes made of bone, like whale song played backward, like 1,000 voices whispering in a language that predated human speech. And buried in that awful chorus, I heard words I understood. "Come see. Come see what we've built for you." Tucker ripped the headset off my ears. "Shut it down. Shut it all down." But Voss was already at the window, pressing both palms against the glass now, his breath fogging it in rapid bursts. "They're coming," he said. "Look, they're finally coming." I looked. Beyond the northern ridge, something was rising into the black sky. Towers, impossible towers, made of material that hurt to observe directly, their surfaces flowing with colors that didn't exist in nature. They rose slowly, majestically, shedding lunar dust like waterfalls in reverse. And at their base, figures were emerging from the shadow, dozens of them, hundreds. Walking in perfect synchronization toward our lander. They wore spacesuits, American spacesuits, Russian, Chinese. Some designs I didn't recognize, all of them moving in that same unsettling grace that Voss had developed. "How long have we been here?" Tucker asked, his voice breaking. I realized I couldn't remember. The mission clock said 22 hours, but it felt like years, like we'd always been here, waiting in this tin can for something we couldn't name. Grim grabbed my shoulder. "Vince, look at your hands." I did. My fingernails had turned black. My fingernails were black from root to tip, as if I dipped them in ink. But when I pressed one, it didn't feel like nail anymore. The texture was wrong. Harder, crystalline. I scratched at the surface of the console and heard a sound like glass on metal. "Tucker." My voice came out steady despite the spike of panic in my chest. "Check your hands." He held them up. Normal. Pink and calloused from years of gripping control sticks. "I'm clean." "Larry?" Grim examined his own fingers. "Same. What the hell, Vince?" "I don't know." I flexed my hands, watching those black nails catch the cabin light. They weren't grotesque, not yet. Almost elegant like polished obsidian. That somehow made it worse. "Voss, what's happening to me?" The kid turned from the window and his expression was beatific. Improvement. They're showing you what you could be, what we all could be. "I don't want improvement," I snapped. "I want answers. What did you expose us to out there?" "Nothing." Voss spread his hands. "They're not hostile, Commander. They're generous. They've been offering gifts to every astronaut who reached the far side, but most refused. Most ran back to Earth before the music could finish its song." Tucker grabbed him by the shoulders. The big pilot had 6 inches and 50 pounds on Voss, but when he tried to shake the kid, it was like trying to move a statue. Voss didn't budge. "How long have they been here?" Tucker demanded. "Since before humans. Since before Earth had oceans." Voss's smile never faltered. "They're patient. They understand deep time in ways our brains can't process. 1,000,000 years is like waiting for water to boil." "Bullshit." Tucker released him, breathing hard. "Vince, we need to abort. Fire the engines and get the hell off this rock before..." "Before what?" Grim was at the window now, staring at the approaching figures. "Before we become like them? Look at how many there are. Decades of astronauts. Soviets, Americans, Chinese. Everyone who came here and never properly came back." I joined them at the window. The figures were closer now, maybe 200 meters from the lander. They moved in absolute unison, their boots hitting the regolith in perfect rhythm. Through the helmet visors, I could see faces, human faces, smiling. "Mission records," I said. "Pull up every lunar mission that surveyed the far side." Tucker was already at the computer. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Apollo 8 first orbited it in 1968. First soft landing on the far side was Chang'e 4 in 2019. Since then, Christ, there have been 17 missions. And the crews? All returned safely, all passed medical evaluations. He scrolled through the reports. But look at the post-mission interviews. Almost identical language patterns, profound experience. Changed my perspective. Humanity's future lies beyond Earth, like they were reading from the same script. Voss laughed softly. "Not a script, a truth. Once you hear the music, you understand what we're meant to become." I grabbed his arm. My black nails clicked against his suit fabric. "What happens if we refuse? What happens if we launch right now and never come back?" For the first time, his smile faltered. "You can't refuse. The exposure has already begun. Your cells are remembering what they used to be, before evolution took the wrong turn, before we became trapped in fragile meat." "Jesus Christ!" Grim stepped back from the window. "They're not human anymore. Those things out there, they look human, but..." "We're more human than we've ever been," Voss interrupted. "We're the blueprint fulfilled. The prototype perfected." Tucker pulled his sidearm from the emergency locker. Regulations required it. Protection against equipment malfunction, loss of mental faculties, anything that might compromise the mission. His hand shook as he pointed it at Voss. "Blake, don't." I moved between them. "He's still our crewmate." "No, he's not. Whatever that thing is, it's not Jack Voss anymore." "I'm exactly Jack Voss," the kid said calmly. "Plus everything I was meant to be. The music showed me genetic code written by architects who understood biology better than we understand hammers. They've been fixing us, correcting errors that accumulated over millions of years of blind evolution." "Fixing us?" Grimm's voice rose. You think this is fixing? Look at Commander Holt's nails. Beautiful, aren't they? Harder than diamond. He'll never need gloves again when he works outside, and that's just the beginning. Voss took a step toward Tucker, ignoring the gun. Your bones will reinforce themselves with crystalline matrices. Your eyes will see wavelengths we don't have names for. Your mind will expand to hold concepts that currently feel like trying to swallow the ocean. Tucker's finger moved to the trigger. Stay back. Shoot me if you want. The bullet won't matter. I'm already beyond damage. Tucker, stand down, I shouted. But the pilot's nerve broke. The gunshot was obscenely loud in the cramped cabin, a crack that made my ears ring. The bullet hit Voss in the chest, dead center, and punched through his jumpsuit. No blood came out. Instead, something else, a fluid that looked like mercury mixed with starlight. It flowed from the wound, then crawled back up into the hole, sealing it. The fabric of his jumpsuit knitted itself back together. Within 5 seconds, there was no evidence he'd been shot except the smell of cordite and the bullet lodged in the far wall. Voss looked down at his chest, then back up at Tucker. His expression was disappointed, like a parent catching a child in a lie. That was unkind, he said. Tucker dropped the gun. His face had gone grey. What are you? I told you. I'm improved. Voss moved to the airlock. They're almost here. You should prepare yourselves. The transition is easier if you don't resist. Lock him in the airlock, Grimm said. Cycle him out. I moved to the control panel, but Voss was faster. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. The grip was like a hydraulic press. The black nails on my fingers sang against his skin, a high-pitched resonance that made my teeth vibrate. You're already changing, Commander, he said softly. Can't you feel it? The music is in your bones now, in your marrow. Fighting only makes it hurt. He was right. I could feel something moving through me, a sensation like carbonation in my blood. My fingernails weren't the only things changing. My joints felt loose, as if my skeleton was being disassembled and reassembled according to better specifications. Let him go, Tucker growled, reaching for another weapon. Voss released me. I'm not the enemy. Humanity's limitations are the enemy. Aging, disease, death, all design flaws. They fixed those problems for themselves billions of years ago. Now they're offering to fix us. At what cost? Grimm demanded. Cost? Voss tilted his head, genuinely confused. There's no cost, only elevation, only transcendence. You're thinking like animals who measure everything in loss and gain. They think in symphonies, in mathematical beauty, in dash. The lander lurched. All three of us, Tucker, Grimm, and I, grabbed handholds as the deck tilted 15 degrees. Warning klaxons shrieked. Red lights bathed the cabin in crimson. What the hell? Tucker lunged for the pilot's chair, strapping himself in. We're moving. Something's lifting the lander. I pulled up the external cameras. The figures in spacesuits had reached us. Dozens of them surrounded the lander, and they were lifting it bodily off the lunar surface. Human hands, or things that looked like human hands, gripped the landing struts, and they raised us like we weighed nothing. Put us down, I shouted, slamming my fist against the console. The black nails left scratches in the metal. Through the window, I watched the lunar surface fall away. The figures carried us toward the towers, those impossible spires of non-material that bent light around themselves. The closer we got, the more details resolved. The towers were covered in writing, mathematical formulas, geometric proofs, chemical bonds, knowledge etched into surfaces that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the standard 3. Looking at them made my vision swim, but I couldn't look away. At the base of the central tower, a massive opening gaped like a mouth. The figures carried us toward it, moving with mechanical precision across the grey regolith. Fire the engines, Grimm screamed. Burn them off. I can't. Tucker's hands flew across the controls. Ignition systems are locked. Someone's overridden the safeties. We all turned to look at Voss. He shrugged. I told you. There's no escape, only acceptance. The opening swallowed us. Darkness closed in, broken only by the cabin lights and a strange bioluminescence from the walls. The figures set us down gently, too gently, like we were made of spun glass. Through the window, I saw them standing in perfect rows. Hundreds of astronauts from dozens of nations, all watching us with those two calm smiles. And behind them, something massive stirred in the darkness, something that hurt to perceive, that my brain kept trying to categorize as machinery or biology or architecture, never settling on any single interpretation. It had been waiting here, waiting for us specifically. I don't know how I knew that. Grim was crying, actual tears streaming down his face. We're never going home, are we? Home is a limited concept, Voss said. They're going to show you what home really means. What existence really means. You'll thank them, eventually. Everyone does. The massive thing in the darkness moved closer. I could hear Tucker hyperventilating in his pilot chair, could hear Grim's ragged breathing, could hear my own pulse hammering in my ears. But underneath all that, I heard something else. Music. Beautiful, terrible music that explained everything and nothing. Music that showed me blueprints for a better human body, a better human mind, a better human soul. Music that promised I would never die, never suffer, never be alone again. My black fingernails clicked against each other as I clenched my fists. And God help me, I wanted to hear more. The music stopped. I don't know how long we'd been sitting there, minutes or hours, but when the music cut out, my head cleared enough to realize I'd been standing at the window, forehead pressed against the glass, black nails scratching patterns into the metal frame without conscious thought. Grim was on the floor, knees drawn to his chest. Tucker had his face buried in his hands, and Voss stood perfectly still in the center of the cabin, waiting. "Why did it stop?" I heard myself ask. "They want you to think clearly for this part," Voss said. "The music is persuasion, but what comes next requires informed consent." "Fuck your consent," Tucker's voice was raw. "We didn't ask for any of this." "You came to the moon," that was asking. Voss gestured toward the darkness beyond the window. "They've been calling since before recorded history. Every civilization that looked up and wondered about those lights in the sky, they were hearing an invitation. You just happened to be the ones who finally accepted it." I forced myself away from the window. The scratches I'd made formed patterns, spirals and geometric shapes that looked almost deliberate. "How many crews have they taken?" "None. They don't take, they offer." Voss smiled, that serene smile. 17 missions to the far side. 11 crews accepted and ascended. 6 refused and returned to Earth. 6 returned? Grim lifted his head. "So we can leave?" "Physically, yes. But the changes have started. Your cells have been exposed to the song. It rewrites genetic code at the quantum level." Voss knelt beside Grim, and his movements were so fluid, it looked choreographed. "The 6 who returned? They're still changing. Slowly. Painfully. Alone. Without the towers to guide the process, the transformation tears them apart over months instead of hours." "You're saying we're infected?" "Upgraded. There's a difference." Voss stood. "The choice isn't whether to change. That's already happening. The choice is whether to do it here, supported by the architects, or back on Earth, writhing in agony while your government dissects you in some black site to understand what you've become." Tucker lunged at him. This time Voss didn't just stand there, he moved, too fast for human reflexes. One moment Tucker was airborne, the next he was on the deck with Voss's hand on his throat. "Violence is a symptom of fear," Voss said calmly. "Fear is a symptom of ignorance. Let me educate you." He released Tucker and moved to the communications console. His fingers danced across the controls, and suddenly the main screen flickered to life. Footage appeared, grainy, date-stamped surveillance video. "Baikonur Cosmodrome, 2021. Soyuz MS-19 crew, post-mission quarantine." The video showed 3 cosmonauts in medical isolation. They looked healthy at first, laughing and talking to doctors through the glass. But as the timestamp advanced, days turning to weeks, changes became visible. One man's eyes shifted color. Another's skin took on a metallic sheen. The third started moving with that same unnatural grace I'd seen in Voss. They refused the full transformation, Voss narrated. Return to Earth before the song finished. Watch what happens. The video jumped ahead. 6 months later, the cosmonauts were in restraints, their bodies warped into something that wasn't quite human anymore. Bone structures had changed. Extra joints had formed. Their faces were still recognizable but elongated, as if someone had stretched them on a rack. The video cut to black. They died screaming, Voss said quietly, because they tried to resist halfway. The architects don't force anything, but once the process begins, stopping it is like trying to unbake bread. Jesus Christ. Grimm was shaking. Where did you get that footage? It was in the lander's secure files all along. NASA knows. Roscosmos knows. Every space agency that sent people here knows exactly what's waiting. Voss pulled up more files, mission reports, medical evaluations, classified memos. They keep sending us anyway. Because the ones who complete the transformation come back changed but functional. Brilliant even. They advance human knowledge exponentially, win Nobel Prizes, revolutionize technology. He brought up photographs, scientists, engineers, administrators, faces I recognized from news articles and academic journals, all former astronauts, all smiling with that same serene expression. Dr. Wei Jiang, lunar geologist, now runs CERN's exotic matter division. Click. Colonel Viktor Romanov, Soyuz pilot, currently heads Russia's quantum computing program. Click. Dr. Henry Wells, Apollo-era astronaut, disappeared from public records in 1975, but his classified work on faster-than-light theory is still being used today. How many? Of the 6,000 humans who've been to space, 47 have been to the far side of the moon. 38 are still alive. 29 completed the transformation. Voss closed the files. They walk among you. They guide your species. They prepare you for what's coming. What's coming? Tucker had pulled himself into a sitting position, rubbing his throat. First contact. Real first contact, not this. Voss gestured at the towers beyond the window. The architects have been waiting for humanity to reach a certain technological threshold. You're almost there, maybe another decade, maybe 2. When you're ready, when you've built the right kind of engines and learned the right kind of mathematics, they'll reveal themselves properly. Why wait? I asked. If they're so advanced, why not just announce themselves now? Would you teach calculus to an infant? Voss shook his head. They're patient. They've watched species rise and fall across the galaxy. They know the timing has to be right, or the shock destroys civilizations. But they can nudge. They can offer gifts to those who make the pilgrimage here. Grimm stood on shaky legs. What do they want from us? Nothing. That's what you don't understand. They're post-scarcity, post-mortality, post-desire. They create for the joy of creation. They've been engineering biological forms for eons, perfecting designs. Humanity is one of their projects. A rough draft they seeded on Earth 4 billion years ago. Now they're offering to show you the final version. The lander shuddered. Through the window, I saw the massive thing in the darkness move closer. It was impossible to gauge its size. My brain kept revising estimates upward. Kilometers tall, tens of kilometers. It defied perspective. Existing in spatial dimensions, my eyes weren't equipped to process. They want to show you something, Voss said. The choice happens after. But first, you need to understand what you're choosing between. The airlock began to cycle on its own. Red lights flashed as pressure equalized, except that shouldn't be possible. We were inside a sealed structure on the moon. There shouldn't be atmosphere. Don't open that door, Tucker warned. You don't have to. Voss moved to the airlock controls. But if you refuse to see, you'll complete the transformation blind and alone. Is that really better? I looked at my hands. The black nails had spread. Now the discoloration extended to the first knuckle on each finger. When I bent them, I heard a sound like wind chimes. My joints were crystallizing. How long do we have? I asked. Hours. Maybe a day if you're lucky. Voss opened the inner airlock door. Beyond it, instead of the cramped chamber and outer hatch, there was a corridor. Smooth walls that seemed to be made of solidified light. The floor pulsed with bioluminescence. "This is impossible," Grim whispered. "No, it's dimensional folding. Space inside is larger than space outside. Basic geometry for them." Voss stepped into the corridor. "Coming? Or would you rather sit here and argue while your bodies remake themselves?" Tucker and Grim looked at me. Command decision. The weight of it pressed down like lunar gravity in reverse. I thought about those cosmonauts in the video screaming as their half-finished transformations killed them. Thought about the scientists and engineers walking Earth with transcendent knowledge and serene smiles. Thought about what NASA knew and had hidden for decades. "We go," I said, "but we stay together. Nobody gets separated." "Agreed," Voss said. We crossed the threshold into the corridor. The moment my boots touched that luminescent floor, I felt it, a subtle vibration through my entire skeleton. The transformation was accelerating, drawn forward by proximity to the source. The corridor stretched ahead, curving gently downward. The walls showed images. No, not images. Windows into other places, other worlds. Civilizations rising and falling, species being uplifted, transformed, sent back to their homes to guide their kind toward readiness. We'd been walking maybe 30 seconds when I realized the lander was no longer behind us. The corridor had sealed itself, and there was only forward now. No retreat, no escape. Only the choice Voss had promised, waiting somewhere in the dark ahead. The corridor opened into a chamber so vast I couldn't see the ceiling. The walls curved upward into darkness, and the floor was transparent. Beneath our feet, I could see the moon's interior. Not rock and metal, but machinery. Vast engines turning in geometric patterns that made my head swim. How long had this been here? How deep did it go? "Welcome to the workshop," Voss said. The chamber was filled with them. Not the spacesuit figures we'd seen outside, but something else. Beings that had completed their transformations so long ago, they barely resembled anything human. Some were tall and skeletal, their limbs extending at impossible angles. Others had condensed into compact forms that seemed to fold space around themselves. All of them were beautiful in the way that frightened me most. Perfect mathematical precision made flesh, or whatever they were made of. One approached us. It had been human once, maybe. The spacesuit fragments still clung to parts of its body like shed skin. Its face had elongated into something graceful and terrible, eyes repositioned to see in multiple spectrums simultaneously. "Commander Holt," it said. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "I was Captain Robert Nash, Apollo 16. I chose to stay." 1972, Grim whispered. "You've been here for over 50 years. Time is different here. I've lived centuries in your decades." Nash gestured with an arm that had too many joints. "The transformation is slow at first, then exponential. What you're experiencing now is just the prologue." Tucker backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The corridor had sealed behind us. "This is insane. We're not staying here. We're not becoming that." "Then you'll die." Nash's restructured face couldn't smile anymore, but I heard amusement in his voice. "The song is in your marrow now. It will finish what it started, whether you cooperate or not." I looked at my hands again. The black crystallization had reached my wrists. When I flexed my fingers, geometric patterns appeared beneath the skin, circuitry made of something that looked like frozen starlight. It didn't hurt. That was the worst part. It felt right, like my body was finally becoming what it should have been all along. "Show us," I said. "Show us what happens if we accept." Nash tilted his head. The gesture was still eerily human despite his transformed state. "You'll need to see the library first. Understanding must precede consent." He led us deeper into the chamber. The other transformed beings watched us pass, their various eyes tracking our movement with clinical interest. Some were taking notes on devices I didn't recognize. Others were simply observing, cataloguing our reactions. We passed through a membrane that felt like pushing through warm gelatin. On the other side, reality changed. The library was a sphere. We stood on the inner surface, gravity pulling us outward toward the walls, rather than down toward a floor. Every surface was covered in information, scrolling text in hundreds of languages, mathematical proofs that evolved as I watched, chemical formulas that built themselves into three-dimensional models. "This is everything they've learned," Nash explained. 4 billion years of accumulated knowledge, physics, biology, engineering, philosophy, art. They're offering you access to all of it. Grimm was already moving toward the nearest wall, his eyes wide. Despite everything, despite the horror of our situation, the scientist in him was hungry. He reached out to touch a flowing equation, and information poured directly into his mind. I saw his expression change from wonder to ecstasy. "Oh my God," he breathed. I can see how quantum mechanics and general relativity connect. The bridge equation. It's so simple. Why didn't we see it before?" "Because you weren't ready." Nash moved beside him. "The human brain in its current form can only process a fraction of reality's true complexity. They fix that. Expand your neural architecture. Add processing dimensions you don't currently possess." Tucker grabbed Grimm's shoulder, yanking him away from the wall. "Larry, stop. That thing is rewiring your head." "It's showing me truth," Grimm snapped. He pulled free, and I saw the same crystallization starting in his fingernails. The exposure was accelerating all of us. Truth we've been groping toward for centuries. Einstein was close, Hawking was closer, but they didn't have the complete picture because their brains couldn't hold it. "Is that what you want?" Tucker's voice rose. "To stop being human? To become one of these things?" "I want to understand." Grimm's eyes blazed. "I've spent my entire life trying to comprehend the universe, and now they're offering me the ability to actually do it. How is that a bad thing?" I saw the division forming. Tucker's military discipline recoiled from the unknown, from the loss of control. Grimm's scientific curiosity was already being seduced by infinite knowledge. And me? I stood in the middle, feeling my body betray me one cell at a time, trying to figure out which instinct to trust. "Commander," Voss said quietly, "you need to decide soon. The transformation reaches a critical threshold within hours. After that, there's no stopping it. You can guide it here, or you can let it ravage you during the flight back to Earth." "We're not going back," Tucker said flatly. "What?" I turned to him. "Look at us, Vince. Look at what we're becoming." He held up his hands, still human, but I could see the faint beginnings of change in his nail beds. "If we go back like this, we'll be lab rats. They'll lock us in isolation and study us until we die. You saw that footage. NASA knows. They'll do the same thing to us." "So what's your plan?" I asked. Tucker's jaw set. "We don't accept the transformation. We don't go back to Earth. We end it here." The implication hung in the air. Suicide, clean and simple. Before the change went too far. Before we became something unrecognizable. "That's cowardice," Grimm said. "That's pragmatism." Tucker's hand moved toward his equipment belt. I'd seen him reload the pistol before we left the lander. "We're compromised. The mission is blown. We follow protocol." "Protocol?" Grimm laughed, and it had a manic edge. "We're standing inside an alien structure older than human civilization, and you want to follow protocol?" "It's all we have left." I saw it happening, the crew fracturing under pressure. Tucker's need for control driving him toward the only choice he felt he could still make. Grimm's hunger for knowledge pulling him toward acceptance. And Voss, standing apart from us all, watching with those two calm eyes. "There's a third option," I said. They both looked at me. "We complete the transformation. We go back to Earth, but we don't work for them." I pointed at Nash and the other transformed beings. "We don't become their agents. We take the knowledge they're offering and use it on our terms." "You think they'll let you?" Nash's voice carried something that might have been pity. "Commander, you don't understand. Once the transformation completes, you won't want to oppose them. Their logic becomes your logic. Their goals become your goals. Not through coercion, through genuine understanding of why they're right." "Brainwashing," Tucker spat. "Enlightenment," Nash corrected. "You'll see the difference soon enough." tremor ran through the chamber. The library walls flickered, and suddenly I could see beyond them. The moon's surface, the earth hanging in the black sky, and something else. Ships. Thousands of ships in orbit around Earth, invisible to human instruments, waiting. "What the hell is that?" Grimm whispered. "The fleet," Nash said simply. "They've been there for decades, observing, making sure your species doesn't destroy itself before reaching critical mass. When enough of you are ready, when enough have been transformed and returned to guide the others, then they'll reveal themselves properly." "How many is enough?" "Current projections suggest you'll reach the threshold in 2037, 12 more years. Then humanity joins the collective of uplifted species, and you begin your expansion beyond this solar system." "Under their control," Tucker said. "Under their guidance," Nash corrected. "There's a difference. They don't conquer. They cultivate." I felt something shift inside me. Not physical this time, deeper. A change in perspective, in priority. Part of me wanted to fight it, to hold on to the man I'd been when we launched from Cape Canaveral. But another part whispered that maybe Nash was right. Maybe this was evolution, not invasion. Maybe dash. No, I caught myself. That was the music talking, the song still echoing in my restructured cells. I forced myself to think clearly. "Voss," I said, "you told us we had a choice. What exactly are we choosing?" "3 paths." He held up 3 fingers and I noticed his hand had developed an extra joint in each digit. 1. Accept fully. Complete the transformation here with their guidance. Return to Earth as an agent of uplift. Live for centuries, free from disease and death, helping prepare humanity for contact. 2. Refuse and return. Die slowly on Earth as the incomplete transformation tears you apart. Your bodies will be studied, and the data will advance their understanding of human biology. 3. Refuse and stay. They'll place you in suspension, preserved but unconscious, until humanity reaches the threshold. Then you'll be awakened and given the choice again, but you'll have lost the intervening years. "That's not a choice," Tucker said. "That's a threat." "That's biology," Voss replied. "You've been exposed. The process has begun. These are simply the available outcomes." Tucker's hand was on his pistol now. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the desperate arithmetic of a man who'd lost control. He could shoot Voss again, shoot Nash, shoot Grimm and me and himself. End it all before the transformation finished. "Blake," I said carefully, "don't. Give me one good reason." "Because I need you." The words came out before I could stop them. "I need you to stay human as long as possible. To be my anchor. To remind me who I was." Something in his face shifted. The hand on the pistol relaxed slightly. "Vince." "I'm going to accept," I said. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. Not because I want to, because I don't see another option that doesn't end in agony. But I need you to document it, to remember. If I come back to Earth as something else, someone needs to know who I used to be. "You're asking me to watch you become one of them," his voice broke. "I'm asking you to bear witness." Grimm moved closer to the library wall. "I'm accepting too. This knowledge. I can't walk away from it. I won't." Tucker looked between us and I saw the exact moment he realized he was outnumbered, outmaneuvered, alone in his resistance. "Damn you both," he said quietly. Nash stepped forward. "If you're ready, the transformation chamber is this way. It's painless when properly guided. Beautiful, even. You'll feel your consciousness expanding, your senses sharpening. Within hours, you'll perceive reality in ways that..." The building shook. Not a tremor this time, an impact. Something had struck the structure from outside. Alarms I couldn't hear but somehow felt began to scream. The transformed beings scattered with inhuman speed, moving towards stations and terminals I hadn't noticed before. Nash's elongated face turned toward the ceiling. "Impossible," he said. "They found us." "Who?" I demanded. "The resistance." Other astronauts who refused transformation, but survived. They've been hiding in the Maria, planning. We thought we'd found them all. Another impact, harder. The transparent floor cracked, and through it I saw something rising from the moon's mechanical interior. Weapons, defense systems activating after eons of dormancy. We need to leave, now. Nash grabbed my arm with his too-many-jointed hand. The transformation chamber is shielded. You'll be safe there while they repel the attack. But Tucker had drawn his gun. He pointed it not at Voss or Nash, at me. "I'm sorry, Vince," he said, "but I can't let you become one of them. I can't let any of us." His finger moved toward the trigger, and Grimm tackled him from the side. Tucker and Grimm hit the floor hard, the pistols skittering across the transparent surface. Both men grappled, Tucker's military training against Grimm's desperate strength. But Grimm moved with that same unnatural grace that Voss had developed, the transformation already giving him advantages Tucker didn't possess. "Larry, stop," I lunged for them, but Nash's hand locked around my wrist with crushing force. "The transformation chamber," he insisted, "now, before the breach." Another impact. This one punched through the chamber wall, and suddenly I could see them. Men in spacesuits, but modified. Weapons grafted to their arms. Homemade armor welded onto standard EVA gear. They poured through the breach, firing projectiles that tore through the transformed beings like tissue paper. The resistance wasn't here to negotiate. One of them spotted me, a human, still mostly unchanged, and raised what looked like a jury-rigged railgun. The barrel tracked toward my chest. Voss moved between us. The projectile hit him center mass, punching through his torso and out his back. That mercury starlight fluid sprayed from the wound, but he stayed upright, already healing. "Go!" he shouted at me. "The chamber is through the left archway." "I'll hold them." I'm not leaving my crew, but Tucker had broken free from Grimm. He scrambled for the pistol, fingers closing around the grip. He spun, and for a horrible second, I thought he'd shoot Grimm. Instead, he aimed at the nearest attacker and fired 3 rounds in rapid succession. Military precision. 2 hit center mass. 1 took the helmet clean off. The man inside the helmet was human, older, maybe 50. His face was scarred, and one eye had been replaced with something mechanical. He dropped, blood forming perfect spheres in the low gravity before splattering against the floor. "Jesus Christ, Blake!" Grimm scrambled backward. "You killed him!" "He was trying to kill us." Tucker kept the gun raised, tracking another target. "You want to become one of these things? Fine. But I'm not dying for it." The library walls were failing. Information spilled out like blood, equations dissolving into static. The transformed beings fought back with weapons I didn't understand. Beams of coherent gravity, devices that folded space into cutting edges. Bodies fell on both sides, human and post-human mixing in a nightmare battlefield. Nash pulled me toward the archway. "Commander, please. If you want to survive this, you need to complete the transformation. Half changed makes you vulnerable. Fully transformed, you can withstand this." I looked back at Tucker and Grimm. My crew, my responsibility. Tucker was giving covering fire to a pair of transformed beings defending the library's core. Grimm had found a piece of debris and was using it as a makeshift shield. They were alive, but for how long? "I'm not leaving them," I said. "Then they come too." Nash's voice carried an edge of frustration. "But we move now." I ran back, dodging between the combatants. A projectile screamed past my head, so close I felt the heat. My boots found purchase on the transparent floor, and I slid to where Tucker was crouched behind an overturned console. "We're getting out of here," I said. "Where?" He ejected an empty magazine, slammed in his last spare. "Case you haven't noticed, we're trapped. The transformation chamber, it's shielded. I told you, I'm not..." "You don't have to transform. But we need shelter, and that's the only option." I grabbed his shoulder. "Blake, I need you alive. Even if you hate me for what I'm becoming, I need you alive." Something in his face softened. "Vince, if you do this, you won't be you anymore." "Maybe. But I'll remember being me. That's more than we'll get if we die here." Another explosion rocked the chamber. Part of the ceiling collapsed, and I saw stars through the gap. The structure was failing. Ancient engineering no match for desperate human ingenuity and stolen alien weapons. "Larry," I shouted, "on me!" Grim abandoned his cover and sprinted toward us. His movements were already too fluid, too perfect. The transformation was accelerating in him faster than the rest of us, maybe because he'd touched the library wall, drunk directly from that stream of knowledge. We ran together, Tucker and I supporting each other while Grim moved ahead with that unnerving grace. Nash led us through the archway, and the resistance fighters tried to follow, but Voss and two other transformed beings formed a wall, buying us seconds we desperately needed. The corridor beyond was narrow, the walls closing in. I heard Tucker's breathing, ragged, panicked. He'd never been good with confined spaces. Fighter pilots needed open sky. "Almost there," Nash said. The corridor opened into a smaller chamber. At its center stood something that looked like a medical pod crossed with a cathedral. Crystalline structures grew from its base, reaching toward the ceiling in fractal patterns. Inside, I could see figures suspended in amber-colored fluid. Astronauts mid-transformation, their bodies caught between human and whatever came next. "You've got to be shitting me," Tucker said. "It's perfectly safe," Nash assured him. "The fluid accelerates and guides the transformation. 12 hours inside, and you emerge fully converted, painless, controlled." "That's not helping your case," Tucker muttered. The door behind us sealed. Organic material flowed across the opening like living cement, cutting off pursuit. We were safe for now, but the sounds of battle still echoed through the walls. Muffled screams, weapon discharge, structural groans. I looked at my hands. The crystallization had reached my elbows. My fingernails were completely transformed, and when I tapped them together, they rang like bells. The skin beneath was turning translucent, showing the geometric patterns of my restructuring bones. "How long do I have?" I asked. Nash examined me with eyes that could see in spectrums I couldn't imagine. "Without the pod? Maybe 4 hours before you reach critical threshold. The incomplete transformation will cause organ failure, neural degradation. You'll die confused and in agony." "And with the pod?" 12 hours. You emerge transformed but stable. Mind intact, memories preserved, identity continuous, just expanded. I looked at Grim. He was staring at the pod with naked hunger, watching the figures suspended inside. "I'm going in," he said quietly. Larry - "Don't, Vince. I've made my choice." He turned to face me, and his eyes had started to change color, shifting from brown towards something golden. "I've spent my whole life searching for answers. They're offering me the ability to not just find answers, but to understand them completely. How can I refuse that?" "Because you'll stop being human," Tucker said. "I'll become something better." Grim moved toward the pod. One of the crystalline structures responded, growing an opening sized for a human body. Something that can actually make a difference in the universe, instead of just observing it from the sidelines. "You're making a mistake," Tucker insisted. "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." Grim looked at me one last time. "Vince, thank you. For everything. For bringing me here. For showing me this was possible." "Don't thank me," I said. "I didn't bring you here for this." "Yes, you did. You just didn't know it." He smiled, still human, still Larry. "See you on the other side, Commander." He stepped into the pod. The amber fluid rose around him, and his body began to glow. Through the translucent crystal, I watched the transformation accelerate, his bones elongating, his organs restructuring, his neural pathways expanding into dimensions my eyes couldn't track. It was beautiful and horrible in equal measure. Tucker turned away. "I can't watch this." Nash moved closer to me. "Commander Holt, you need to decide. Your transformation is reaching critical levels. Another hour, maybe 2, and the choice will be made for you. Your body will complete the process whether you're in the pod or not." I looked at my crystallizing arms, at Tucker's human hands, at Grim suspended in his transformation womb. 3 paths, Voss had said. But really, there were only 2 now. transform or die. The middle ground had evaporated the moment we entered this structure. What about him? I pointed at Tucker. If I transform, what happens to Blake? He returns to Earth in the lander. We'll guide him through the launch sequence remotely. He can report back to NASA, tell them whatever story he wants. Nash tilted his head. Most choose to lie, to say their crewmates died in accidents. It's easier than explaining the truth. They'll know, Tucker said. They've always known. You said so yourself. They know. But they maintain plausible deniability. One astronaut returning with tales of alien transformation. That's a mental breakdown, easily dismissed. Physical evidence is harder to deny. Nash looked at me. That's why they want you to complete the transformation here. So you can return to Earth looking human enough to function, but changed enough to serve their purpose. And if I refuse, I asked, then you die here. Your body returns in a sealed casket. NASA performs a quiet autopsy, learns what they can, and the project continues. Nash spread his too many jointed hands. You're not the first to refuse, Commander. You won't be the last. The architects are patient. They've waited this long. They can wait longer. The floor shook again. The resistance was breaching deeper into the structure, fighting room by room. How long before they reached us? Tucker grabbed my arm, his hand on my crystallized skin. The contact felt strange, like touching something through a membrane. Vince, listen to me. You're still you. Right now, in this moment, you're still Vincent Holt, the man I've flown with for 3 years. My friend. Blake Dash. If you get in that pod, that man dies. Maybe something better comes out. Maybe something worse. But the Vince I know will be gone. His eyes were wet. So I'm asking you, as your friend, not your pilot, don't do this. Come back to Earth with me, die human, die yourself, and leave humanity blind to what's coming. Humanity survived before we came here, it'll survive after. I looked at the pod, at Grimm transforming inside, at my own hands, already more crystal than flesh, at Tucker, still blessedly, stubbornly human. I'm sorry, I said. Tucker's face fell. He knew what I'd decided before I said it. I'm so sorry, Blake. I pulled free from his grip and walked toward the second pod. The structure grew an opening for me, crystal petals unfolding like a flower. The amber fluid inside pulsed with light, eager to remake me into something the universe could use. Behind me, Tucker's voice. God damn you, Vince. God damn you. I stepped inside. The fluid rose. The fluid swallowed me whole, warm, thick, alive. It poured into my lungs and I should have drowned, but instead I breathed it. Each inhalation brought information, chemical signals, genetic instructions, blueprints for what I would become. Time stopped meaning anything. Seconds or hours, I couldn't tell. My body unmade itself piece by piece. Bones dissolved into component molecules and reassembled according to more efficient geometries. Organs merged, split, transformed. My heart developed additional chambers. My lungs restructured to process exotic atmospheres. My brain... God, my brain. New neural pathways exploded through my consciousness like fireworks. Dimensions of thought I'd never accessed suddenly opened, and I could think in directions that had no name. Mathematics became a language I spoke fluently. Physics revealed itself as elegant poetry. I understood quantum entanglement not as theory, but as lived experience, feeling my consciousness spread across probability waves. And the memories came. Not my memories, theirs. The architects. 4 billion years of accumulated experience flooding through me. I watched stars being born, witnessed civilizations rise from primordial soup and reach toward the cosmos, saw the architects themselves transform from biological entities into something beyond biology, beyond matter, becoming creatures of pure organized information. They weren't aliens, not anymore. They were what came after, what every sufficiently advanced species eventually became. the final form toward which intelligence inevitably evolved. And they wanted us to join them, but beneath the beauty, beneath the transcendent knowledge and promise of immortality, I felt something else. A current of wrongness that my expanding consciousness couldn't ignore. The transformations weren't gifts, they were assimilations. Every species they'd uplifted had lost something essential in the process. Their cultures homogenized, their diversity collapsed into singular purpose. The architects didn't conquer through force, they conquered through seduction, offering candy-coated extinction disguised as evolution. Humanity would be next. 29 transformed astronauts weren't preparing Earth for first contact. They were softening it for integration. By 2037, enough key figures would be converted that resistance would become impossible. Humanity would slide into the collective without even realizing we'd lost ourselves. This was genocide. Gentle, patient, well-intentioned genocide, but genocide nonetheless. My eyes opened. I hung in the amber fluid, body fully transformed. I could see Tucker through the crystal wall, still human, still stubbornly himself. Nash stood beside him, explaining something. The resistance fighters had broken through the outer door, their weapons raised, and I understood what I had to do. The pod opened. Fluid drained away as I stepped out, testing my new body. Every movement was precision itself. I could feel the electromagnetic fields in the room, sense the gravitational fluctuations, perceive time as a flexible dimension rather than a fixed arrow. "Commander," Nash said. His voice carried harmonics I'd never heard before. "Welcome to..." I punched through his chest. My hand, no longer human, crystallized into something harder than diamond, penetrated his transformed body and closed around whatever passed for his heart. I ripped it free. Nash staggered backward, that mercury starlight fluid pouring from the wound. His face registered confusion more than pain. "Why?" "Because you lied." My voice had changed, deeper, resonating across multiple frequencies. The transformation isn't elevation, it's erasure. I crushed his heart in my fist. He collapsed, his body trying desperately to heal but failing. The transformation chamber's systems recognized me as a threat and began shutting down, cutting off the healing energy that sustained the converted beings. Tucker raised his pistol, aiming at me. "Vince?" "Still me," I said, "just more." The resistance fighters poured in, weapons trained on both of us. Their leader, a woman who'd had half her face replaced with cybernetic implants, assessed the situation with cold, tactical precision. "You killed Nash," she said. "Why?" "Because I saw what the transformation really is, what they're really doing to us." I gestured at Grimm's pod, where he floated in his amber prison. "They're not uplifting humanity. They're deleting it. We know." The leader lowered her weapon slightly. "That's why we've been fighting. But you're one of them now. Why should we trust you?" "Because I completed the transformation. I have access to their systems, their knowledge, their plans." I moved to the control interface, my new hands interfacing directly with the alien technology. "And I know how to stop it." Tucker stepped closer, pistol still raised but wavering. "What are you talking about?" "The fleet in orbit. The 38 transformed astronauts on Earth, the entire operation." My fingers flew across the interface, pulling up schematics and data streams. "They're coordinated through a quantum relay network. Shut down the relay and the transformed lose their connection to the collective consciousness. They revert to baseline human with enhanced bodies but no alien influence." "That's impossible," the resistance leader said. "We've tried to hack their systems for years." "You couldn't because you're still human." "I'm one of them now. I have access." I pulled up the relay's location, deep inside the moon's mechanical core. "But destroying it requires someone who can survive the radiation down there, someone transformed." Understanding dawned on Tucker's face. "You're going on a suicide mission." "Not suicide, sacrifice." I looked at my crystallized hands. I accepted the transformation to save humanity. This is how I actually do it. The second pod opened. Grim emerged, his transformation complete. He looked magnificent, tall, graceful, his body a perfect synthesis of human and architect design. His eyes swept the room, taking in Nash's corpse, the resistance fighters, me at the controls. "What have you done?" His voice carried that same multitonal quality mine had developed. "Saved us," I said. "Larry, listen to me. The transformation is a lie. They're not helping humanity evolve. They're absorbing us into their collective, making us them." "I know." Grim smiled, and there was nothing human in it anymore. I accepted that when I entered the pod. "You knew?" "I saw it in the library. All of it. The assimilation, the erasure of individuality, the homogenization of culture." His golden eyes locked on mine. "And I chose it anyway. Because the alternative is remaining small, limited, mortal. The architects offer us transcendence, Vince. Why would I refuse?" "Because it's not us anymore," I shouted. "Larry, you're talking about erasing humanity." "I'm talking about upgrading it. Evolution isn't gentle, Vince. It never has been. Species that don't adapt go extinct. This is humanity's choice. Transform or perish." He moved toward me with inhuman speed. I barely blocked his first strike, his crystallized fist slamming into my forearm with force that would have shattered human bones. We were evenly matched, both fully transformed, both operating with identical enhancements. But I had one advantage. I'd kept my human anger. We fought through the transformation chamber, two post-human beings trading blows that shattered crystal and dented alien metal. The resistance fighters scattered, giving us room. Tucker shouted something, but I couldn't focus on his words. All my attention was on Grim, on the thing my friend had become. He was faster, more skilled. His scientific mind had already analyzed our body's capabilities and optimized his fighting technique. Every move he made was calculated for maximum efficiency. But I fought dirty, human dirty. I feinted high and kicked low, targeting joints the way bar fighters did. I grabbed a piece of debris and swung it like a club, rather than using precise martial arts. I spat that mercury starlight fluid in his eyes. Grim stumbled. I tackled him, driving us both toward the control interface. My hands found his throat, if he still had one, and I squeezed. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so damn sorry, Larry." His golden eyes met mine. Even now, even choking, he looked serene. "Don't be." This was always how it would end. One of us choosing humanity, one choosing transcendence. "You could have chosen both." "No, I couldn't." His hand came up, touched my face with surprising gentleness. "You're still holding on to who you were." I let go. "That's the difference between us." I squeezed harder, his body spasmed, that alien biology fighting for survival. But I didn't release. Couldn't release. Too much was riding on this. Larry Grim, geologist, scientist, friend, died in my arms. His body went limp, the light fading from those golden eyes. The transformation couldn't save him from direct neural trauma. I laid him down gently and returned to the controls. My hands shook, still capable of grief, despite the transformation. "Tucker, I need you to get to the lander. Launch as soon as I destroy the relay." "What about you?" His voice was rough. "The relay is in a radiation zone that will kill even a transformed body within minutes. I'm not coming back." I pulled up the navigation data and transmitted it to his suit computer. "But you are. You have to tell Earth what happened here, what they were planning. Make sure humanity stays human." "Vince, that's an order, Sergeant." I managed to smile. "Tell them I went out as myself, not as whatever they tried to make me." The resistance leader stepped forward. "We'll make sure your sacrifice matters. The resistance has cells on Earth. We'll expose the converted astronauts, shut down their infiltration network." "Good." I accessed the final controls. "Give me 30 minutes to reach the core, then get out. This whole structure comes down when the relay dies." Tucker's face was wet. "You're a goddamn hero, Vince." "I'm a man who made a choice." I looked at my transformed hands one last time. "Maybe that's all any of us can be." I ran, through corridors of impossible geometry down into the moon's mechanical heart. The radiation intensified with every meter, waves of energy that would have killed a human instantly, but merely damaged my enhanced body. I felt cells dying, systems failing, but I pushed forward. The relay was a sphere of pure light suspended in a chamber vast as a cathedral. Quantum threads connected it to every transformed being across the solar system. I could feel them all, the astronauts on Earth, the figures standing on the lunar surface, even Grimm's fading consciousness dissolving into the collective. I reached into the sphere, the light consumed me, and for one eternal moment I was everyone. I felt Nash's confusion at his betrayal, Grimm's transcendent peace, Voss's serene certainty, the resistance fighters' desperate hope, Tucker's grief-stricken rage, and I felt the architects themselves, vast and ancient and genuinely confused by my choice. They didn't understand sacrifice, didn't understand choosing death over transcendence. I taught them. I ripped the relay apart from inside, using my transformed body as a weapon, as fuel, as a final human fuck you to beings who thought they'd solved mortality. The quantum connections snapped one by one. Across Earth, 38 transformed astronauts suddenly forgot why they'd been working toward 2037. The knowledge drained from their enhanced minds, leaving them powerful, but aimless. The fleet in orbit flickered and vanished, recalled by architects who suddenly understood that humanity wasn't ready, wasn't willing, to be absorbed. My body disintegrated into light and information, scattering across dimensions I'd only just learned to perceive. My last thought was simple. Tucker, get home safe. Then Vincent Holt, commander, ceased to exist. Tucker's debriefing lasted 6 months. They kept him in an underground facility near Cheyenne Mountain, running tests, asking the same questions in different configurations, searching for inconsistencies in his story. They found none because he told them the truth, every horrible word of it. The transformed astronauts on Earth lost their purpose overnight. Dr. Wei Jiang abandoned her exotic matter research and took up painting. Colonel Romanov resigned from the quantum computing program and moved to a monastery in Siberia. Dr. Henry Wells, the Apollo-era astronaut who'd been missing from records since 1975, walked into a police station in Baltimore and asked to go home. He couldn't remember where home was. NASA quietly retired them all. Generous pensions, comfortable houses, round-the-clock medical monitoring disguised as veteran care. The resistance had been right. There were protocols in place. They'd always known. Tucker tried to go back to his old life. His wife took him back, asked no questions about the 18 months he'd been gone. 18 months. The mission was supposed to last 10 days. Time had stretched differently on the far side, or in that structure, or in his trauma. The doctors couldn't explain it. He got a job flying commercial routes, Houston to Denver, Denver to Seattle, Seattle to San Francisco. Safe, boring, human. He never looked up at the moon when it was visible through the cockpit window. 3 years passed, then the message arrived. It came through his personal computer, bypassing every firewall and security system. A video file, timestamp dated the day Vince died. But that was impossible. The relay had been destroyed. All quantum connections severed. Tucker watched it alone in his garage, door locked, bottle of whiskey already half empty. The video showed the transformation chamber, recorded from the pod's internal camera. But it wasn't showing Grimm's transformation, it was showing Holt's. Tucker watched his friend's body remake itself, watched the neural pathways expand, the bones restructure, the consciousness spread across dimensions. And then, right before the transformation completed, he saw something the architects hadn't intended. A glitch. A moment where the human mind fought back against the reprogramming. Vince's eyes opened inside the pod and they were calculating. Planning. He'd known even then what he would do. The transformation hadn't changed him. It had armed him, given him the tools to destroy the relay from within. It had been a con from the start. Vince had played the architects, accepted their gift knowing he'd use it as a weapon. The video ended. A text file appeared. "Read me." Tucker opened it. Vince's words, written in those final seconds before he entered the pod. "Blake, if you're reading this, I'm dead and you made it home. Good. Someone needs to remember what happened here. But here's the thing. I lied to you. Not about the architects or the transformation. About what I was planning to do. I knew I'd destroy the relay. I'd seen it in the library data before we ran. Saw the whole network mapped out. Saw the weakness. The architects are ancient, but they're arrogant. They didn't think a newly transformed human could threaten them. I let them believe that. Used your anger as cover, made you think I'd been seduced. But I was playing them from the moment I stepped in that pod. Sometimes the only way to fight monsters is to become one first, then remember you're human. Stay human, Blake. Someone has to. V. Tucker closed the laptop. Outside, the moon was rising over suburban Colorado, its far side forever hidden from view. He thought about those towers still standing in the lunar darkness, about the 38 transformed astronauts living quiet lives on Earth, about the architects patient and waiting, convinced they'd try again in another century when humanity forgot what happened. Tucker poured another drink. Then he opened his phone and called the resistance leader whose number he'd memorized but never used. When she answered, he said 5 words. "I'm ready to tell everyone." The war wasn't over, it had just begun.